Well, morning prayer. It's a little weird, it's a little different, it's a little interesting. The layout of the scriptures are a little bit different. And you may have noticed that I like to find the pieces that match between all of the readings, sometimes the psalm, sometimes with even the music. But for morning prayer, and for this day specifically, I just keep thinking about Hannah. We're pretty heavy on 1 Samuel this morning. You may have noticed that we're also a little backwards. We read the second chapter as the psalm before the reading in the first chapter. So let me reframe it for you. Let me read to you the introduction for chapter 1, just a few verses before the first reading. There was a certain man of Ramathaim, a Zophite from the hill country. He came from Ephraim. His name was Elkanah, son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zoph, an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, the name of the other, Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man used to go up year by year from his town to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts at Shiloh, where the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests of the Lord. So to have 2 wives and to travel yearly for sacrifice probably meant that Elkanah was wealthy. And he probably had 2 wives because his first wife wasn't able to offer an heir. And it's on that thought that we start reading our first reading. On the day when Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters, but to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her severely to irritate her. How rude. Can you imagine having a husband you love who has another wife so that he can have heirs, and all she does is make fun of you? Oh, Hannah. And when she finally does have a son, she prays and she cries and she begs and she has a son, and she says, I will set him before you as a Nazirite until the day of his death. That means he won't drink wine, no intoxicants, he won't cut his hair, he won't shave his beard. She continues to pray, Lord, please, this is what I want. This is how I want it. Please, please, please. And Eli sees her praying silently, just her lips are moving. Most people would pray out loud. So Eli can't see her, can see her lips moving, but can't hear her, so he thinks she's drunk. And she says, no, I'm just pouring out my soul. I have great anxiety and vexation all the time, and I really want a baby, and I will do whatever it takes for that baby to be precious to the Lord. And Eli says, go in peace. Some of you may remember the joy and surprise when I learned I was going to be a mom, some 20 years ago. I stood in Hannah's shoes. I cried and I begged and I bargained. And I finally got the joy of my life, the desire of my heart. I was as fulfilled as Hannah was fulfilled. And what a shock for me to read the end of this chapter. She has this boy, she names him Samuel because she asked him of the Lord. And the rest of the chapter that we didn't read says the man and all his household went up to offer to the Lord yearly sacrifice, to pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, "As soon as the child is weaned, I will bring him, that he may appear in the presence of the Lord and remain there forever. I will offer him as a Nazirite for all time." Wait a minute. Hannah, you and I just begged and pleaded and prayed, and we're going to take our babies and leave them in the house of God? How is this possible? The chapter goes on, several more verses. I encourage you to read this story. Because as soon as he's weaned, Hannah takes that baby and says, "Therefore I have lent him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is given to the Lord." And she left him there for the Lord. Left him. This desired child, left him with somebody else. How is this possible? Well, the canticle that we read before the first reading answers that question. It's Hannah's prayer. We read that part first. She says, "My heart exults in the Lord, my strength is exalted in my God. My mouth derides my enemies because I rejoice in my victory." Again, there's more. We just read it a moment ago. What kind of strength do you have to beg and plead and bargain and then bring that gift for someone else to care for? Hannah's prayer says, "He raises up the poor from the dust. He lifts the needy from the ash heap to make them sit with princes and inherit a seat of honor." Hannah's prayer is a plea to God to be faithful to her like she has been faithful to God. And it is a thanksgiving of her new view of the future. That child that she begged and pleaded for was God's to begin with. It wasn't a hardship. She didn't give over. She didn't ignore her son. She included the community that loved her, even the community of her husband's other wife who picked on her and tormented her. And Hannah went on to have more children. Samuel was special. That view of the future became special. She found joy just in knowing that God still cared for her. And then that joy was compounded when Samuel was actually conceived and bore. It's a thanksgiving for a better future. After her prayer, the next verse in chapter 2 tells us, "Then Elkanah went to Ramah, while the boy remained to minister to the Lord in the presence of the priest Eli. Now the sons of Eli were scoundrels." That's the cliffhanger. Because I really do encourage you to go back over these first 2 chapters of Samuel and read them as the story they are, to get the full effect. To cry and to laugh along with Hannah, to listen to the narrator tell us about Samuel and his journey, about how the faithfulness of a mother and a father and the mentoring of a holy man maintained Samuel's life of faith and practice. The rest of the books in Samuel 1 and 2 weave Samuel's family line through David and on to Jesus. It's fascinating. It's funny. It's sad. And that kind of sounds like the days we live in right now. We struggle, we wonder, we ponder, we laugh, we fear. And we still gather together as a community to share these stories of our lives. The prayers, the tears, the mentors and the tormentors, the joys and surprises. I appreciate these Sundays of morning prayer because they shake us out of our routine. They give us a reminder of where we came from and how far we've traveled. The joy that we bring to the house of God, and we leave there for another.